Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching second part of What If Team 7 accidentally goes to an unknown time period. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Sakura screamed, horror etched on every part of her face. Naruto, don't be an idiot. The two were already engaged in a heated argument, so her cries were ignored. Stop him, Sasuke. Kakashi commanded his dark pupil, who was the one nearest to the blonde. By channeling nearly a third of his chakra into his feet, the teen was able to fly across the field more quickly than anyone who wasn't a shinobi could see. He wasn't quick enough, though. Tiger Star said to no one in particular, I do not want any disturbances. Strangely able to follow the raven-haired warrior, his golden eyes darted over to him. Focusing, he slid his blade from its sheath. When Naruto realized what he was planning, his eyes widened, and he responded by slamming his hands into a string of seals. As he slammed his hands to the ground, a huge barrier emerged, enclosing the clearing they were standing in with a translucent circle. Sasuke barely had time to pause before his face was vaporized because the jutsu only took a few seconds. Through the one-way shield, he cast a silent plea to his comrade. Sasuke pleaded, Naruto, don't do it. You're good, but not that good. He didn't want to witness the murder of another of his priceless people. Naruto narrowed his eyes and scowled a little. Naruto responded, returning his focus to the ominous man standing on the other side of the field. Don't doubt me, Teme. I've been training my ass off for the past 3 years. You have no idea of what I can do now. The leader of Muramachi grinned. Tiger Star made a scene and threatened, whatever skills you possess, nothing is strong enough to defeat me. I will destroy you, along with the hope of these petty people. Naruto gave an eye roll. Returning to his I'm going to totally piss you off strategy, he asked, all talk, no bite. When are we gonna get right down to it? Tiger Star responds, brandishing his sword, after you. With a smile, Naruto vanished without a single muscle movement. Tiger Star was suddenly encircled by 3 shadow clones, each of whom was rapidly approaching him with their fists outstretched. Kakashi let out a sigh. He groaned, does he always have to be so predictable? To his astonishment, however, smoke erupted from the circle as the land shook with an explosion. A voice shouted, Bunshin Bakuha. After the deafening blow, Kakashi's shocked eyes grew wide. Clone explosions? I don't think I ever taught him that. I've only seen it a few times, though, and mostly from Itachi. After the smoke cleared, everyone could see that Tiger Star had been standing in front of the bomb, and there was a sizable crater where he was. Naruto grinned. Like I said, all talk and no be. A fairly hard kick to the back sent the blonde sailing towards the ground before he could finish his sentence. Tiger Star made a graceful one-footed landing. He approached the smoking hole where Naruto had crashed into the ground with composure. However, nothing was visible when he looked into the crevice. Just a hole that goes into the earth. The teenager flew up at the leader's face as the dirt in front of his feet split. Tiger Star sprawled across the clearing after Naruto's fist struck his jaw. As the Kamakura fighters applauded, Naruto grinned triumphantly. However, the triumph was fleeting. Tiger Star snarled and picked himself up off the ground, saying, it'll take more than that to defeat me. There was a strange dampness on his chin. When he whipped his finger in front of his face, he saw that his thumb had a fair amount of blood on it. Ryuchi shouted to his brother, he made Dad bleed. No one has been able to do that since Teisho. Daisuke was too shocked to speak, so he just nodded. Sasuke shouted, quick Naruto, while he's paralyzed. Naruto screamed, don't you think I know that? Sweden? Hanryu? The air burst into a huge stream of water that rushed in the direction of the tiger that was waiting. Hoping to avoid it, he leapt to the side. To his astonishment, however, the water stream altered its trajectory as he did. He was sent to the outer ring of the barrier after the jutsu crashed into his chest. He came to a slithering halt and lay still. Naruto's eyes were focused intently on the man's body. Confused by the result, he muttered, it can't be that easy. It just can't. That one blow couldn't be enough if this Tiger Star was supposed to be powerful enough to defeat the Kamakura's greatest warrior and be feared across the whole country. He had been practicing jutsu, but he hadn't even needed to use it. Ishiko claimed that the technique was the only thing capable of defeating him. Did he not? He was shocked to see that the figure had changed. The man in front of him was now Kyoto, not Tiger Star. Additionally, Tiger Star's sheathed sword was no longer there. Naruto's eyes suddenly widened in realization. The sword, however, went through his shoulder and out his back before he could react. Tiger Star held the blade high and smirked evilly as he saw Naruto's body slide down until his chest struck the sword's hilt. Nothing you can do will kill me. You're just as weak as the rest of them, Prophecy, Tigerstar said. Before whipping the boy straight off the blade and sending him hurtling through the one-way shield, he made a tight circle with the weapon. With a crash, the blonde landed at Ishiko's feet, gripping his heavily bleeding arm in pain. Tigerstar stepped out of the light, purple barrier and declared, "Next time you Kamakura brats get in my way, it will be a lot worse." It was, "Muramachi, move out," and they were gone in an instant. The location where the powerful Tigerstar once stood was all that anyone could do but gaze in silence. Naruto. Sensei, are you okay? Daisuke broke out of his and the other's reverie with a cry. Sakura wrapped her hand in chakra and said, "Here, let me heal you." She applied light pressure to the wound, causing the blonde to grunt softly. He muttered, trying desperately to avoid fading into the blackness known as unconsciousness, "I'm fine, really." Sakura stitched the tissues in his arm back together and replied, "Oh, can it? This gouge is horrible, and I'm a medic, so don't fight the intellect." Looks like he just missed the artery. Lucky that he didn't hit his mark. Woulda killed you, Kakashi said. The injured blonde gave his sensei a fierce look. He complained, "Thanks for the confidence boost." Ishiko was unable to do anything but stand silently and gaze intently at the boy during all of this. Naruto looked at the boy with the forest hair when he saw this. The warriors around Naruto snickered as he said, "Could you stop staring? It's creeping me out." Ishiko grinned back, shaking himself out of his reverie. "Yay, sorry. Just thinking," was his straightforward response, and his contemplative expression reappeared. Hiraku pondered, "Well, aren't you going to give us a hint? We can't read your mind." "I'm so impatient," Ishiko sighed. Ishiko clarified, "I was recalling the incident with Kyoto a week or so back." Naruto sobbed, "Oh, let that last forever. I apologized." Ishiko gave a quiet laugh. Ishiko asked the blonde, who was picking himself up off the ground, "I wasn't talking about the mistake you two made. I was talking about what you told us. You said you've never touched a sword before, am I right?" Naruto said, Yay. What's that have to do with anything?" Team 7 let out a frustrated sigh. He was such a fool. Ishiko said out loud, "I was thinking, if you were good enough to defeat Kyoto without any skill, how good would you be if you actually learned?" The 11 pondered the idea in silence. Naruto became very excited and exclaimed, "I say we give it a go. I've always wanted to learn to wield a sword." Sasuke smirked and said, "Why would we trust you with a sharp object?" Naruto frowned. Ishiko added, grinning slightly at the thought, "Of course he would be getting trained by one of our most experienced swordsmen." "You can learn with me," exclaimed Hiraku, who was practically beaming with joy. Ishiko remarked, "I think Sasuke should learn too. Just for a bonus against them." Naruto frowned. With a childlike whine, he asked, "Does he have to?" Naruto's frown deepened as the group laughed. "What?" Ishiko smiled widely and said, "Then we'll get right on it. Naruto and Sasuke, follow me. We're going to get you some swords." After a month, the training field echoed with the shrill clash of Sasuke's and Naruto's blades. Their trainer, Havar, gave them the order, "Keep at it, never let your eyes leave you opponent, try and predict their movements." Naruto grunted as he deflected a blow to his left shin, saying, "Sasuke, stop cheating. He never said you could use your bloodline." The red-eyed Uchiha, beginning to gain the upper hand because of his Sharingan, replied, "Show me a rulebook." Naruto danced away after saying, "A strong ninja doesn't rely on his trump cards all the time." Despite his sneer, Sasuke dissipated his Sharingan. Now that he had him, Naruto grinned. Naruto dodged, slid around Sasuke's body, and ended up behind him as he spun around and delivered a blow to the head. It was exactly where he was weak. He gently pointed the sword tip into the middle of Sasuke's back while flashing it out. The movements were so quick that all of this occurred in a matter of seconds. Sasuke's gaze expanded. He asked, "How'd you do that?" He was aware that Naruto had no blood line limit, but how could the blonde have foreseen his behavior? Naruto grinned. Not wanting to reveal the whole secret, he replied simply, "Something I picked up from Kakashi. I watched your feet." If a conflict ever arose between him and the Dark Uchiha, it might end up being his greatest advantage. Sasuke shook his head and muttered something about "stupid one," "I'd sensei," and "lucky." In one sense, Sasuke's sword was straightforward, but in another, it was completely original. It had a simple hilt made of a low-quality metal that was securely wrapped in sturdy black leather. However, a blade that had never been made in history emerged from the hand grip. The metal itself had a rather understated appearance and was black. However, the sword would become as hot as volcanic lava once Sasuke activated his bloodline, making it capable of slicing through anything. The blade would be covered in flames when combined with his level 1 curse seal, creating a unique and lethal weapon. The appearance of Naruto's sword wasn't all that different. Kakashi requested that the hilt be made in the same manner, but with gold metal instead, in remembrance of Kyuubi's strength. Similar to the Kyuubi's chakra, the blade had a deep red color. Naruto had not yet used the special ability, and no one knew what it was exactly that he had asked to be. They only knew it would be large. Havar walked over to the camp and remarked, "Naruto, great job. Take a break." Daisuke and Ryuchi are getting anxious. With big smiles, both apprentices bounded up to their sensei. Ryuchi exclaimed, "So, what are we gonna do today?" Sasuke grinned. Sasuke went to his opponent and said, "Well, what haven't we covered yet?" Naruto replied, grinning broadly at the amount of progress they had made in just 1 month: stances, basic taijutsu, some advanced taijutsu, basic medical work, history, sword work, archery, and agility. "I guess we could start with," Masuru shouted, "Naruto, Sasuke," as he jogged up to the fore, Sakura following closely behind. Naruto realized right away that something was amiss. Asking sharply, "What's wrong?" Naruto looked more at his teammate than Masuru. According to Masuru, Alia's missing. Have you seen her? Naruto's heart ceased beating. His eyes strayed to Sakura, and when he met her gaze, his suspicions were regrettably confirmed. The realization of her dream was imminent. After a single glance and a brief moment of seeing Sakura's frightened eyes, the two shinobi were sprinting toward the portal together. As they sped around the corner, Naruto questioned, "You're sure she's not anywhere around here?" Ryuchi, Masuru, Daisuke, and Sasuke were running after them, but the two ignored them and continued to run. Sakura's eyes were wide with terror as she muttered, "Positive, she's nowhere to be found." "We can still get to her," Naruto exclaimed, attempting to reassure both himself and the girl with the pink hair. "But Naruto, she's going to die, in my vision. We can't just give up," shouted Naruto as he accelerated. They were now at the door, eagerly awaiting the opening of the man-sized hole. They had now also been overtaken by their followers. Panting a little from the dash over here, Sasuke questioned, "What's wrong? What's the hurry?" Sakura and Naruto looked at each other, wondering if they should tell them or not. Sakura let out a sigh. Apparently, there was no other option. Sakura began, apprehensive of the conversation that would follow. "Remember the first night we spent here, the same day we were all reunited?" The others just stared in confusion as Sasuke nodded slowly. Sakura explained, pausing at the most graphic moment of the vision, "Well, while we were sleeping, I had a dream. I saw Alia in a field, just standing there, when she was attacked by an elite force of Muromachi warriors. And then Tiger Star showed up and then..." Masuru asked, "Then what, Sakura?" and pushed her forward. Sakura let out a frustrated sigh. Her final statement hung in the air like a knife as she concluded, "And then she died." The 4 Kamakura soldiers who were unaware of the news were overwhelmed by it, and the 6 stood in silence. "So, in this vision, Alia is going to die?" Masuru inquired, not entirely convinced. Sakura gave a solemn nod, her eyes lifeless. Sasuke proposed, "Well, we can still reach her, right?" in an attempt to rekindle a glimmer of hope and a sliver of life. Sakura gave a shrug. She answered, "Maybe. If we haul some serious ass, we might have a chance." Now that he was serious, Masuru asked, "Do you know what field she was in?" Sakura gave a headshake. She described it as best she could, saying, "It looked like any other field in the forest. Large, circular, half was long grass, the other was dirt." Masuru grinned, perplexing everyone in the room. His eyes came back to life as he exclaimed, "Half grass, half dirt. That's Ashy Field." The Muromachi traders were also excited, and the 3 shinobi cocked their heads in perplexity. With his intelligence put to the test, Naruto asked, "You know what one we're talking about?" Masuru smiled broadly and nodded enthusiastically. "That field was partially destroyed by a volcano eruption many years ago. The lava melted into the ground long before my time, but the grass never grew again. That's the only clearing like that. That's the one," Masuru yelled as he ran back toward the... After him, Naruto called, "Where are you going?" He called back, vanishing behind the wall, "Going to get Ishiko and the others. You guys get a head start though, we'll catch up." Now, the door to the outside world was wide open, waiting for its passers-by to leave. There was only one issue. Sasuke posed the same query that everyone else had. Anyone know how to get to Ashy Field? Masuru ran through the house, looking quickly in each room for his old friends and allies. He darted quickly past the armory, the dining hall, the kitchen, the storage room, the infirmary, and the bedrooms. He found them where he should have known they would be, the meeting room, after skidding to a stop. Ever since the Tiger Star incident all those weeks ago, Ishiko had been all about strategies and plans. The green-haired leader was even more nervous because they hadn't seen the murderer's hide or tail. He was certain that the man was planning a terrible scheme. Which he was, in a way. Masuru interrupted the boy mid-sentence, relaying, Ishiko, we have to move, now. The teenager's eyes were hard as he looked up. Something about Tiger Star? He inquired, his gaze darting between his younger friend and the information in front of him. Masuru scratched the back of his head and said, well, no. Ishiko asked, his eyes accusing, then what reason do you have of disrupting our meeting? Masuru clarified, his voice growing solemn, Alia's missing. Sakura had a vision a while back. She's gonna die, by Tiger Star's hand. In a single, smooth motion, Ishiko's eyes widened and he leapt up, swiftly followed by everyone else. He screamed, then what the hell are we all doing standing around, and hurried past the room. Kakashi asked, where's Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke? Masuru, who was following his leader, answered, I sent them ahead with Daisuke and Ryuchi. Where exactly are we headed? Hiraku asked, expressing the question that no one else had asked. Masuru gave a straightforward response, Ashy Field. Ishiko picked up the pace and muttered, we need to move as fast as we can. I'm not about to lose another warrior because of Tiger Star's ambition. Are you sure it's a good idea to be listening to a 9-year-old for advice? Sakura inquired. With a smile on his apprentice's face, Naruto replied, I totally trust Daisuke's directions. I mean, he does live here, and we have been studying geography for the past couple of days. Ryuchi pointed to a tiny gap in the trees and yelled, we're here. In the hopes that it wouldn't be too late, the 5 soldiers accelerated their pace. As soon as they entered the clearing, Ishiko, Hiraku, Kaya, Kakashi, and Masuru saw Sakura crouched over something in the middle. The other 4 were observing the unidentified object closely. Silently, Naruto questioned, is she okay? Sakura gave a nod. With her hands no longer glowing, Sakura responded, she's stable now, but she needs some major attention and this isn't the place to do it. Sakura asked, what do you propose we do then? Ishiko strode up to the group and gave the order, Hiraku and Kaya will escort Alia and Sakura back to camp. We'll be close behind. After receiving nods from the 3 people, Sakura carefully removed Alia's motionless form from the floor. They vanished in an instant, leaving the 6 that remained by themselves. With an unreadable expression, the green-haired leader turned back to the remaining warriors. With his eyes darting between the 2 shinobi, he questioned, Tiger Star? With ferocious eyes at the mere mention of the man's name, Naruto responded, he was gone when we got here, just like Sakura's vision. Ishiko let out a sigh. In an attempt to cheer up the leader, Naruto said, but we were able to actually see what she wrote in the dust this time. The green-eyed teenager's eyes glistened with curiosity as his head twitched. He pondered, Alia gave us a message. Naruto gave a nod. Confusion gripped the blonde as she said, yeah, but it was only a name. Meiji. However, Ishiko appeared to know exactly what he was discussing. For a brief moment, his jaw fell and his eyes grew wide. Who's Meiji? Sasuke inquired, growing as perplexed as his teammate with the cerulean eyes. Naruto cocked his head in confusion and added, yeah, and if he's so important to gain a reaction like that, then why haven't we heard about him before? Ishiko swore and started to pace, saying, oh, he's very important and a bad omen in every way. If he actually made an appearance in this battle, then this is bad, very very bad. What was so terrible about this Muromachi warrior that it had Ishiko in a panic? Now everyone was beginning to worry. Normally, the great commander of Kamakura's army would only respond in this way to Kyoto or Tiger Star. With a serious expression, Kakashi asked, who is he, Ishiko? Ishiko stopped pacing. His face was ghostly white and his eyes were filled with horror. He is a sign that Tiger Star is preparing his final attack, to start the full-on war that will affect everyone in the country. And ultimately, wipe out the rest of the Kamakura clan, and you, our only hope. Ishiko replied with a trembling voice. Uncertain of why the presence of a single warrior made such a difference, Naruto pondered, and how does his appearance make that so? Because, Meiji is Tiger Star's greatest fighter, and his best assassin, he replied. Daisuke said softly, and it doesn't stop there. His face was filled with comprehension and insight, as though he was finally recognizing something that had been staring him in the face the entire time. His expression changed to one of wonder and reflection as he continued, "Now I know why Alia looked so familiar when I first met you all. That's why I got the feeling that I've seen her before." Naruto leaned down to his student's eye level and asked, "What are you talking about, Daisuke?" "I'm saying that it's all clear to me now. 6 years ago, when he first arrived, he wasn't alone. He had a girl tagging along with him, only about a year older, and their village had been destroyed. Their parents and relatives included. Meiji thought that if he and his sister joined Tiger Star's forces, they would be saved from all the harm and damage that the Muromachi were causing the world. The girl was disgusted and swore that she would have no part of it, that she would always remain loyal to the Kamakura, even to the end. Well, Dad didn't take that one too well. They agreed to admission Meiji, but they locked the girl away, sentencing her to death." Explained. Now, nobody knew where the boy was going. But somehow she escaped during the night, running away from the camp before anyone could catch her. And no one ever found out how she was released. But I saw that whole thing. It was her brother. He snatched the key from the guard while he was sleeping and set her free. The girl had insisted that he go with her, but he said that he was loyal to Kamakura no more. He was with Tiger Star now, and this act would be his last in the name of good. Daisuke continued, his eyes filled with anticipation and dread simultaneously. Still utterly bewildered, Sasuke said, You mind telling us what this has to do with anything?" Daisuke gave a quiet smile. He deadpanned, the answer now clear. "Don't you see? The girl, how I recognized Alia even though I'd never met her in my life. Well, I was wrong. I had seen her before, once, 6 years ago." The realization of what the Muromachi traitor had been receiving all along caused everyone to gasp. "So Meiji is," Ishiko muttered, "Alia's brother." Alia had been attacked 2 days prior, and she was still not conscious. With the thought of retaliation still fresh in their minds, everyone assumed Tiger Star would strike immediately in order to eliminate another Kamakura. To win them over with their vulnerability. Kindness. Yes, they were correct. One patrol reported, "A week after the incident, Tiger Star's been spotted. He's attacking a nearby village right now." Naruto smirked and said, "Well, then I guess it's time for round 2. As the 11 Kamakura warriors made their way to the besieged village, Ishiko reprimanded Naruto, saying, "Naruto, don't do anything rash. We're only going to check it out. There will be no fighting." The prophet with the blonde hair rolled his eyes. Tiger Star's topic was extremely sensitive for the teenager. Naruto sarcastically responded, Aye, Captain." Sasuke and Sakura laughed. Ishiko frowned. "I'm serious, Naruto. You remember what happened last time? We were demolished." Reminded him. Naruto sneered. The blonde retaliated, refusing to be outdone, saying, "If I remember correctly, I do believe it was me that had a sword driven through their shoulder. And my pride went up in flames to compliment the loss." Ishiko gave the shinobi a fierce look. The leader forewarned Naruto, "Keep it up, and you won't be in the battle when the time comes." The blonde remained silent after making that remark, silently gazing at the path in front of him. Village. The damage was less severe than they had previously observed. Here and there, houses were reduced ashes mounds, still smoldering from the residual flames. The square was in ruins, with food, wood, and merchandise haphazardly scattered throughout the deserted circle. Hopefully they had been evacuated because there was nobody around. Sasuke ran up to Ishiko, who was standing in the middle of the square, and said, "I don't see Tiger Star." Sakura joined the group and said, "Or any of the Muromachi warriors." With a question in his visible eye, Kakashi pondered, could he have tailed it out of here already? Ishiko bent his head, thinking deeply. "Tiger Star, it's not like you to pass up the opportunity for bloodshed. Where are you if this was a scheme to lure us out of hiding and into your clutches? What do you have planned?" He was nearly knocked out cold by the realization that hit him hard. However, it did a fantastic job of frightening him. To stop this before it started, who else would Tiger Star want to move aside? The only person who could prevent him. The air rushed out of his lungs as the blonde, seemingly at the exact moment, smashed through a wall from a nearby house, tumbled across the street, and hit the opposite wall with a heavy thud. With a grin of pure malevolence plastered on his face, Tiger Star leapt out of the fence's jagged hole. Tiger Star gloated, to fall for such a pathetic trap. How dumb are you? Before he sent the teen with the cerulean eyes through a wall, it was clear that the conversation had begun. With one eye clenched shut in agony, Naruto watched him out of the other. Abrupt bursts of burning pain erupted from his side as he clutched it. Impact. Related broken rib, now doubt. Naruto M. Naruto snarled and staggered to his feet, launching himself into a basic offensive stance. No, Ishiko. I am not going to run. I will stand and fight. I will beat you this time. Tiger Star's laugh reverberated throughout the small village, reverberating in each alleyway. Do you really believe that 6 weeks has given you enough strength and skill to beat me? How completely and ably laughable. If anything, your defeat will only be more fun for me, if you have improved in the slightest of ways. Tiger Star said, using the word improved lightly. Naruto grinned. With the leader's O.So favorite word against him, the blonde retorted, stalling for time till you're back. Up gets here. How pathetic of you. Tiger Star curled his fists in preparation for some trouble as he sneered. He flicked his eyes to the Kamakura soldiers and growled, let's do this, and no interferences. Naruto gave them a knowing look and told them to keep their distance. The blonde was momentarily startled when Tiger Star initiated contact. Tiger Star attempted to strike Naruto in the stomach with a bone. Crushing blow, but Naruto deftly dodged it, sliding out as it hit. He appeared to be running for the hole as he ran toward the wall on the other side. Tiger Star flashed after him, gaining quickly as he gritted his teeth. The man with the golden eyes growled, trying to escape. Naruto was focused on the hole and didn't answer. He leapt straight into the air and clung to the wall above the gap as soon as he arrived at its gouging entrance. Tiger Star stumbled over the edging and smashed into the hole because he didn't have time to consider stopping. Unable to contain their laughter, Sakura and Sasuke started laughing. Sakura fell to the ground, holding on to her side. What an idiot, laughed Sasuke. With a smile, Ishiko suppressed a chuckle. Tiger Star glared at the two, causing the disturbance as he pulled himself up off the ground. He became enraged and moved to attack them, saying, no one makes a mockery of me. The man stumbled a few steps as Naruto leapt down and kicked him hard in the back. The blonde interrupted the leader and his allies to remind him, your fight's with me, not them. Tiger Star's fists clenched, the force causing the knuckles to turn white. Then let's finish this, so I can kill 3 birds with 1 stone, he said. Naruto's eyes flashed from sapphire to crimson as he ground his teeth together. Feeling the weight of his enigmatic, evil side pressing in and consuming the blonde's rage, Kyuubi said, remember him. Fighting the wave of power being hurled at him, Naruto told himself, I know. Breathe, relax. It was a pleasant feeling. Naruto twisted the man's leg and threw him against the wall behind them after blocking a kick to the man's neck. Tiger Star turned the situation to his advantage by pushing off the wall and hurling his body back at the blonde, striking Naruto hard in the chest. They fought on the edge of the large clearing after the teenager fell out of the narrow alleyway. In an attempt to avoid getting in Naruto's way, the 4 in the center shifted to the other side. When Hiraku, Kaya, and Masuru happened to be approaching them, they narrowly avoided colliding with them. With the exception of the 2 Muramachi, everyone was now together. Naruto briefly considered charging up a Rasengan but quickly changed his mind. He wasn't sure if the move would work against an immortal, even though it was a real powerhouse with other enemies. The hell with it, ah. The wind centered on Naruto's right hand and started to spin quickly around his body. One of the many abilities Naruto had acquired over the years of intense training was the ability to form the Rasengan without the aid of any shadow clones or his other hand. With enormous winds inside the sphere twisting wildly, the ball of chakra materialized, forming a weapon of mass destruction. Tiger Star's eyes grew wide. This was a move he had never seen before. Did only the prophecy have the ability to execute this legendary move? Could this be the only attack that could truly kill him? With a furrowed brow, the leader reached for his sword's hilt and carefully slid it out of its sheath, the sound of the metal grinding reverberating throughout the field. Now that his body was out of the way, Naruto adjusted his weight and held the aura orb at his side as the winds grew stronger. Naruto reached out, the jutsu now fully charged and headed straight for Tiger Star as they charged at each other. Tiger Star pulled out his sword when they were roughly 10 feet apart, and the blade instantly turned bright red, sending a surge of energy in the direction of the blonde. Unsure of how to respond, Naruto used the notorious Rasengan move. The red string sliced through the concentrated ball like butter, striking the blonde in the chest instead of the 2 attacks canceling each other out. The attack didn't seem very strong at first. However, Naruto was flung backwards by the red aura, vanished in an instant, and reappeared after crashing through a wall. Tiger Star grinned contentedly as the sword's gleaming disappeared. He laughed and expertly whirled his sword in a tight circle, saying, my weakest attack killed the chosen. What a pity. The blonde's chakra sense was sought after by the shinobi. A moment later, Kakashi gave a gentle smile. Thus, it is not yet finished. Coughing up a mouthful of blood, Naruto crawled out of the ruins, covered in dust, dirt, and rubble. Grinning, he raised his head. Tiger Star rolled on the balls of his feet and squinted his eyes. Tiger Star was beside the fallen blonde in an instant. The teenager skidded across the stones and collided with the well in the center after he gave him a hard kick to the side. The man was beside him once more, moving more quickly than most people could see. He pushed his foot beneath Naruto's body and kicked him up, forcing him to stand up straight. He took hold of his neck and whirled around on his heel, flinging him a good 30 yards before he collapsed onto the ground and writhed in agony. A familiar voice called out, "Naruto. Sensei," with a tone that conveyed worry and distress. Tiger Star's eyes widened, and so did the blonde's. Both of them were aware of who it was. Tiger Star slowly spun around, not entirely convinced by what he had heard. The leader turned to face the frozen traitors and asked, "Daisuke?" The boy with the raven hair had been so preoccupied with his teacher that he had forgotten the precise person they had come to look for. Their dad. Turning away from his former opponent, Tiger Star yelled, "Ryuchi, you too? Do all of my family members betray me?" Before turning to face his sons. Daisuke and Ryuchi looked at each other. They were now in the fire. Dad. We did this because. As the more outspoken of the two, Daisuke yelled, "Because we're sick of what you're doing. Look at all the pain and misery you've caused these innocent people. You're power-hungry and blind, and uncaring." Ryuchi sharply pressed his elbow into his brother's abdomen. His eyes were wide with panic as he whispered, "What are you doing? Dad's gonna blow." Daisuke continued, "Ryuchi, he needs to be woken up. Look at what he's doing. We have to change his view on things. If we don't, all our new friends." He bowed his head and sighed, trying to conceal the tears that threatened to spill. "We already lost Mom because of Dad's ambitions. Are you just going to stand by and watch it happen again?" he said. When Ryuchi realized his brother was entirely correct, he bit his lip. His face changed from one of fear to one of resolve. He continued, his voice firm and confident in the face of the tiger, "Daisuke's are right, Dad. Mom sacrificed herself for the right thing, trying to save all those blameless people that you were slaughtering. She died for the Kamakura, and we're completely willing and ready to do the same." When Tiger Star's children finally made a significant point, he was enraged, not proud or emotional like most other parents would be. His teeth were grinding together as he held onto the hilt of his sword. Tiger Star swore and rushed to the two boys, whose expressions changed from hard to disbelieving. "Then I drop your title. You are no longer my sons or a Muramachi, and with that stripping, it is now my #1 objective, to kill you," he said. Naruto stopped breathing. The others were more than 50 yards away, and they were too stunned to move. For him, everything began to move slowly, and he experienced a surge of energy coursing through him. Pushing himself off the ground, he sped in the direction of the apprentices. Daisuke's point of view, it was his intention. In fact, he was going to murder us. I was aware of his personality. Take a look at my mother's situation. However, to kill kids, your own kids? Man, that is sick. I suppose I was aware that this would occur. Ryuchi's point of view, despite my father's objections, I burst out like that. It was fantastic, however, that has now led him to seek our blood, which I suppose is a sign of his demise. However, he most likely would have killed us even if we had remained silent. Typical point of view, the ripping sound of the sword piercing flesh was nauseating. However, the man's blade was not smeared with a young boy's blood. Tiger Star's eyes grew wide, but he still had a sly smile on his face. Tiger Star laughed and stabbed the teenager in the shoulder, saying, well, haven't we been in this position before? But there's a twist this time. You ran right into this one." Naruto grunted, his shoulder hurting too much. The Kyuubi he knew as his friend was fading away, but the rage was far worse. With his royal purple eyes gleaming in the darkness, Kyuubi's evil side's heavy, dark voice resounded, "Accept my power. Indulge yourself in the hatred and rage you feel for this man and take his life, before he takes yours." The good Kyuubi's voice was weak, but Naruto could feel him crashing against his cage door somewhere in the dark. He was only able to concentrate on the black, swirling chakra that was approaching him. The power would overwhelm him, and he would do more harm than good on the outside, so he knew he had to leave. However, it simply felt wonderful. Naruto snarled, his voice animalistic and simultaneously doubling as the Kyuubi's, "You're my opponent now." He looked up, his freshly sharpened teeth jutting out of his mouth in a growl. His claws developed into tiny daggers. His cheek whiskers became more shady than usual, and his hair went wild. However, his eyes had changed from being crimson to a majestic purple, the purple of Kyuubi's evil side. A tight barrier of black aura encircled his body, causing the blade to slide out of his shoulder, instantly steaming away the wound. That wasn't the Kyuubi's power, Kakashi exclaimed. Naruto was powerless over it, it was something else. He quickly approached Daisuke and Ryuchi, seized them both with one arm, and then disappeared, only to reappear among the group. The teen was now a one-tailed form, completely engulfed in the power of the evil chakra. Daisuke fought against the hold that Kakashi had on him. I have to help Naruto. Sensei, so I'm going to leave, he shouted over the whining winds that were starting to rise. Kakashi retorted, that's not Naruto anymore. Daisuke looked back at his teacher as his eyes grew wide. In the mass of energy surrounding it, he could make out his body, but it was most definitely not Naruto. Kyuubi yelled, it's great to be out again, as a devilish smile appeared. Tiger Star thrashed around, struggling to break free from the demonic boy's grip, and his breathing was labored. This was a power he had never seen before, and he was now genuinely afraid. Naruto sent the leader flying across the clearing with a single, fluid kick to the stomach. He was behind him, round-house kicking him into the air in a black streak. He was above him now, flashing once more, and he flipped with skill, landing a blow to his chest as the Muromachi spiraled to the earth's surface and crashed into it. When the dust settled, it became evident that the man had been drilled 10 feet or more into the earth, and the crater in which he lay may have been about 30 meters in diameter. Glaring at the creature hovering above him, he wiped a stream of blood from his chin. The Kyuubi roared as it entered for another blow, saying, to be free, I will destroy you with my power. Wasted inside this young boy. Tiger Star braced himself and was flung once more, crashing through a brick wall and skidding along the stone. He stood up unsteadily, covered in blood. He clutched his side and grimaced. The boy's ribs were broken. With a soft landing, Kyuubi, Naruto started to walk slowly in the direction of the terrified tiger. Desperate to get the boy back to normal, Ishiko commanded, Naruto, stop, he's taken enough now. This gave him chills, but he had no idea what power it was. It felt like death was imminent. With a toothy grin, he growled, silence, you fool. The one you call Naruto has been lost inside. The Kyuubi has returned. Tiger Star reached for his sword, which was resting on the floor close to him. Slicing a line of blood across the hilt, he buried it in the ground. The sword started to emit a golden light, which surrounded the man. He smiled. He spit out, the Kamakura will fall for sure now, and vanished into the darkness. Enraged that his target had disappeared, the Kyuubi growled. With a fresh victim in view, he now turned to the Kamakura. He took a step toward them and yelled, now, to destroy his precious people. He would be filled with pure hatred if I killed you all, freeing me for all eternity. Abruptly, he froze, trembling. He had wide eyes that wavered between cerulean and purple. Get off of me. Naruto's grunting voice could be heard. Hesitantly, he raised his hands and tore at the chakra covering his body, struggling for control against the Kyuubi. He cried, why you will not control me, and collapsed to his knees. With blood streaming from the scratches he was making, he clutched his head. Slowly, the chakra and power dwindled and eventually returned to the seal at his stomach. Naruto sensed that the good Kyuubi, his friend, had taken the place of the evil aura. As the grasping pieces of power continued to try to take hold, Kyuubi coached, very good kid. Easy now, find yourself. His eyes faded into the sapphire they usually were, and the last of the black disappeared. With a gasp, he collapsed onto his hands and began to breathe heavily, his blood and sweat blending. What was that? Kyuubi hung his head in shame and apologized, saying, the evil side of my being. He got a hold of you. I am truly sorry. You did well. I could barely regain control. He's strong, very strong, replied Naruto. He looked up to see his fellows staring back at him with bewilderment and terror. Although the three shinobi had witnessed that power previously, it had never been so lethal. They needed to do some research because that wasn't the typical Kyuubi. Point of view of Hiraku, Naruto was engaged in combat. With himself? How could he have done that? I don't understand. From where did that power originate? It's something I've never seen. Indeed, Kakashi acknowledged that we were unaware of certain aspects of Naruto. A hand suddenly grabbed me from behind and dragged me into a house with a huge hole in it. I tried to scream for assistance, but I was silenced when a hand was roughly smacked over my mouth. An old voice growled, do not talk, if you wish to live. My lips curled up in disgust, and my eyes narrowed. Fingering the hilt of my sword strapped to my waist, I growled, "Tiger Star. Picking me off the group, are you?" Grinning, the man in the golden garment emerged from a shadow. "I guess there's no fooling you. No, I am not here to kill you. Well, not intentionally. I have a proposition for you, Kamakura warrior," Tiger Star said with a smile. I tightened my jaw. "A suggestion?" "Do you remember your father?" he asked, starting to pace me. Slowly, I nodded. I replied, spitting the commander's name like venom. "He went to war about a year before Kyoto killed my mother. We had word that he was killed, in your battle." Tiger Star laughed. "Oh, so naive are the young. Your father was never killed. In fact, he was on his way home, to you, when he was ambushed by some of my men. They noticed the Kamakura colors on his suit. He was taken to my finest prison holds. Well, the one with the best security. He's been there quite a while now." Tiger Star continued. As soon as I heard those final words, I almost passed out. Unbelieving, I squeaked, He's alive?" Tiger Star gave a slight smile and nodded. The disgusting man in front of me said, closely observing my face, "And I'm willing to return him to you, with a price." My suspicions increased along with my hope. I asked politely, "What do you want me to do?" Tiger Star grinned. "Nothing much at all. All I want is for you, to get rid of Naruto." His voice deadpanned. My mouth fell open. I snarled, holding my sword tightly, "I would never kill Naruto. He has been a friend to me ever since we met. Now get out of here, before I behead you." Now, let's not be hasty. I merely meant that you drive your friend away from the Kamakura. Expel him from the group. That is all." Tiger Star clarified. I gave it careful thought. Is that really how I would betray him? However, my dad is my family. Dad, Naruto, and Naruto. With hesitation, I said, "You promise no harm will come to Naruto?" Tiger Star grinned and nodded. "He promised. I give you my word. Do we have a deal?" he asked, holding out his hand while observing me. After a few moments of staring at his hand, I hesitantly shook to complete the transaction. He grinned once more, as though he had won something. Tiger Star retreated into the shadows and vanished from view, promising, "I will return your father to you the next time we meet." For a moment, I stood there trying to process what I had just committed to. However, I quickly left the house and returned to the group after waking up from my reverie. Now that he was well, Naruto was looking at us with regret and tears in his eyes. My heart fell. I felt awful about what I was going to do, but I had no choice. For my father. Walking home. Normal point of view. Naruto stayed at the rear of the procession home, observing the ground without looking at anyone. He had pushed away Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi's attempts to speak with him, claiming that he didn't believe it was safe for them to be around him. Following a few more tries, they decided to speak with him when they returned so they could restrain him and have a meaningful conversation with him. After inhaling deeply, Hiraku retreated from Kaya's side and approached Naruto, who was trudging 10 feet or more behind the others. He recoiled from the brunette and leapt back until a respectable distance separated them. Naruto said in a low voice, "You shouldn't be near me. I can't control that power." Hiraku gave a quiet smile. Hiraku motioned for the blonde to approach and said, "It's fine. I trust you completely. But, look, we really need to talk." Despite his timid agreement, Naruto refused to move more than a foot away. Hiraku let out a sigh. Hiraku, fearing what he was going to do, began, "Look Naruto, that power you showed back there, it really scared us." Naruto hung his head and nodded solemnly. Silently, he answered, "I know. I'm a monster." Hiraku gave a headshake. Hiraku bit his lip and reassured him, No, you're not a monster. You just lost control, that's all." Feeling slightly better, Naruto smiled softly. The smile vanished as I said, "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." "Yeah?" asked Naruto, not sure what was going on. Hiraku let out a low moan. "Well, I was talking to Ishiko about the whole thing, and he said that with you unable to control that power, it could break out without warning. You could really hurt someone," Hiraku said. Once more, Naruto's heart fell. With a resolute tone, Naruto replied, "I know. But I'm going to work on it, to get that thing under my hold. I promise." According to Hiraku, "No, you won't." Naruto's step stumbled, but he got back up just as quickly. With suspicion growing, the blonde asked, What are you talking about?" Hiraku revealed the worst aspect of his deceit when he said, "Well, because you can't control it, Ishiko thought it'd be best if we banished you. You aren't allowed to come back with us. And you must stay away." The rest of the group was unaware of what was going on until Naruto stopped. Hiraku halted as well. He was determined to finish this. Naruto looked at his allies and remarked, "What about Kakashi, and Sasuke and Sakura? I know they'll understand. They know what happened." Hiraku concealed the guilty expression he now carried by hanging his head in shame. Hiraku replied, "They agreed that it'd be best." Naruto made another desperate attempt, saying, "But if I could just get a chance to talk to Ishiko and the others." With the tears on the verge of spilling, Hiraku shook his head. Hiraku concluded, sounding as though it had been made up, "It's been decided, Naruto. You're to leave, immediately." Naruto let out a sigh. Naruto said somberly, "All right, then. I suppose I'll go. See you, Hiraku. Good luck." Before vanishing into the woods, he took one final glance at his fleeing allies. After a short while, Hiraku looked up to see Naruto nowhere to be seen and the group starting to disperse. The brunette gazed sorrowfully at the spot where Naruto had vanished just moments before turning to rejoin his friends. With a tear streaming down his cheek, he turned back and exhaled, "I'm sorry, Naruto, I'm so sorry." With a gentle whoosh, the portal opened, allowing the Kamakura and Konoha ninja to return to their covert location. Hiraku was the last of the warriors to file in. Ishiko looked around the ranks to make sure everyone was present. There weren't many blonde shinobi, so he furrowed his brow in perplexity. He said, "Where's Naruto?" Hiraku winced. Tell them lie after lie. It was starting to get really painful. He said that he had to go. Hiraku quickly played the part. Ishiko gave a knowing nod. I see. Well then, come on you guys. We need to begin training. The final battle is dawning, and we need to be as prepared as possible. Daisuke and Ryuchi, you boys have weapon training with Hiraku. Shinobi, you can practice your jutsu. The rest of you, follow me to the boarding room. We have maps to look over." The leader with green hair ordered, starting to walk toward the structure. After acknowledging with a nod, the soldiers moved on to their designated locations, each group discussing in private what their training would entail. Hiraku sighed, glanced regretfully at the door of the portal that was closing, and then walked away solemnly. Naruto conversed with the Kyuubi while strolling along a well-worn path. Kyuubi said, "Why don't you go back, Kit? Have a conversation with them." "Because they'd already made their decision, and I'll honor that. If that's what helps them win the war, then that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make," replied Naruto. "I just don't understand why you don't explain in person. I could even speak for you if you like," Kyuubi responded. Naruto laughed. The blonde replied, "Nah, I think that'd make the situation worse." Kyuubi answered, "Maybe so, but it'd be interesting to say the least." Naruto laughed out loud and said, "Yay, for someone like you." A voice said, "For someone like who?" and startled Naruto out of his reverie. Inside him, Kyuubi snarled. But Naruto subdued the fox. With an evil smile, the king of misery stepped out of the trees like a deadly omen. With his teeth bared, Naruto growled, "Tiger Star." The man raised his hands in a gesture of tranquility. With a smile, the Muromachi leader reassured, "Easy now, easy." Naruto sneered, "I'm here to simply talk." The blonde stood up and fingered the holster at his thigh, asking, "What do you take me for, an idiot?" To the surprise of the young Jinchuriki, he replied, "Oh, no, in fact, I think you are quite valuable. Naruto, I wish for you to come with me and become my apprentice." As dinner time arrived, Kamakura filled the dining hall. At the head table, everyone was laughing and chatting at the same time, temporarily forgetting the fear that surrounded them every day. However, that delusion was quickly dispelled when Sakura rushed up, her eyes wide. "Guys, where's Naruto?" she said in a terrified tone. Most of the warriors simply shrugged. They were still unaware of the true horror of the situation. Ishiko, closely observing Sakura's every action, pondered, "I don't know. Didn't he come back earlier?" The medic with the pink hair frantically shook her head. She started to tremble and cried, "No, he wasn't in his room, or outside training. I checked the entire mansion. He's not here." Sasuke got up and walked over to her side, trying to reassure her by putting a hand on her shoulder. However, she simply dismissed him and started to get anxious. She began to pacing the table and fidget with her hands nervously as she stammered, He must have left while we were coming back from the village. I am mean, with the release and everything, he must have run away." Sasuke disagreed and shook his head. Sasuke responded, "No, he wouldn't do that. I mean, it happened before." "Yes, he would. He's always worried about the fox being released because of his emotions, and if we're nearby. And when that wasn't the Kyuubi, not the real one. Didn't you see his expression once he finally regained control? Pure pain and apology. Sakura said, her voice filled with rage. Although he hadn't wanted to accept it, Sasuke bowed his head and acknowledged that Sakura was correct. Naruto had left. Ishiko got up quickly, his expression resolute. Well, if that's the fact, we need to find him, now. Not only is the biggest battle of the war coming, Tiger Star strives for his death. If he was surrounded by a squad of their best warriors, along with the commander, Tiger Star, and Meiji, he won't stand a chance. He stated, having begun to formulate a strategy. Alia grabbed him by the arm before he could continue. Ishiko, think, she said, her eyes free of the usual boredom that filled the room and replaced with fear and uncertainty. Yes, we do need Naruto, and he is our only hope. But what are we going to do? He could be anywhere in Japan by now, and it doesn't help the fact that Muromachi soldiers are around every corner. I know we need to find Naruto, but honestly, we can't. She had reopened since her near-death experience, returning to the joyful, resilient youngster she was before they were all drawn into this conflict. Ishiko let out a sigh. You're right. With the final battle being due close, we can't risk anybody's safety. But we need him. And not only that, he's our friend. What are supposed to do? He responded, becoming increasingly desperate. Alia gave a shrug. She muttered, but everyone at the table heard her as if she had been shouting through a bullhorn. Naruto has a good heart, and has common sense, even though he does a pretty thorough job hiding it. He'll show at the battle, with or without us. Sakura gave a nod. She comforted, smiling softly, she's right. Naruto's been in situations like this before, and no matter what, he's never let us or anyone else down. Ishiko watched her intently, barely looking at her. She gave a supportive nod. With a sigh, the green-eyed leader dropped back to the ground and buried his head in his hands. I really hope you're right. In a vast field, surrounded by trees, stood the Kamakura. Due to a recent fire, the grass was sparse, giving the ground a greenish-gray hue that complemented the sky above. Lighting flashed across the sky as the vast expanse was encrusted with black clouds, creating a threatening scene. The blue hue of the Kamakura had started to fan out due to the increasing wind, creating a wall of cerulean on a portion of the clearing. Ishiko and his fellow soldiers were on the front line, all dressed in their typical garb, but this time they had enough artillery to defeat an army, and they hoped to accomplish that. Not even wanting to consider the conclusion of his sentence, Sasuke began, Naruto's not here yet. Do you think, but stopped himself. No, Sakura answered, he'll be here. I hope, anyway. The most despised man emerged from the forest on the other side of the battlefield, accompanied by his sizable army dressed in red and black. On his left was Kyoto, the commander who was always hated, with a threatening smile on his face and his sword securely strapped to his back. Meiji was on the right, staring at his sister. Alia tried not to look at her brother, who was standing next to the man in charge, and instead kept her gaze fixed on him. With just 10 feet separating the two forces, the advancing army halted. Ishiko stiffened, advancing to the front of the line to avoid the altercation. Tiger Star stepped forward, with Kyoto and Meiji standing down closely behind. Tiger Star grinned, a knowing look on his face. Good to see that you decided to show up, even though the odds are tilted terribly in my favor. He laughed. Ishiko clenched his jaw, his typical rage and hatred brewing. The green-eyed leader responded, the outcome is still undecided. We will win and we will put your plans to a stop, Tiger Star. Tiger Star laughed. Look around you, Ishiko. We outnumber your army by hundreds. The man chuckled as he spread his arms across the vast array of fighters in the background. Numbers do not determine the result of a battle. Skill and heart, that's what wins a battle, Ishiko replied. Tiger Star smiled. He said, really? He searched the sea of blue with his eyes. He smirked and added, you're short a blonde prophecy. Ishiko balled his fists. It seems he has abandoned you in your hour of need. Hiraku recoiled. He was solely to blame for Naruto's disappearance and his location in the forest, or worse. Sakura said, Naruto will be here, I can assure you that, Tiger Star. She started to move toward the man, but Sasuke stopped her. Tiger Star grinned. He grinned, his voice tinged with victory and knowledge, I wouldn't hold your breath on that. Ishiko's eyes narrowed, he was concealing something he knew. The green-eyed teenager asked hesitantly, almost fearing the response, what are you saying? In response, the Muromachi merely beckoned to the sea of warriors behind him. They immediately split apart, creating a path for an invisible figure. Then a boy who appeared to be around Sakura and Sasuke's age emerged from the crowd. His chocolate brown eyes gleamed, and his brunette hair hung just above his eyebrows. He wore a black shirt and pants, with a red sash that hung over his left shoulder, crossed his chest, and slipped behind his right waist. Meiji retreated, disappearing into the crowd, and the enigmatic newcomer joined Tiger Star, rising to the position of second in command. Kyoto gave the brunette a fierce look, but he was careful not to let Tiger Star see. With a loving glance at his pupil, Tiger Star declared, "This is my greatest warrior, the best man in the Muromachi forces. He is the Kasai Hanta, my apprentice, and he will be your demise." Or was it a warning? The brunette bowed and cast a sorrowful glance at the Kamakura. The leader was perplexed by this. He's looking at us with desperation. Why would he be depressed and terrified of the impending conflict? He should have learned to let go of his feelings first if he is actually Tiger Star's apprentice. As Sakura whispered to Sasuke, "I didn't know he had a student." The boy with the raven hair merely shrugged. Ryuchi muttered, "Neither did we." The two twin shinobi gave him a perplexed look. Masuru asked in a confident tone, "Do you really think that this one newbie will take us all down?" All the Tiger of Time could do was smile. "Yes, because if he can take down your prophecy single-handedly, then I think he will be able to take you." Without even trying to conceal her astonishment, Sakura let out a gasp. They became aware of the horrifying truth at that very moment. Naruto would not arrive. The air was filled with astonishment and incredulity. Whispers spread like a wave among the Kamakura forces. Their hero had died and was never to return. In an instant, their chances went from doubtful to slim, their courage to panic, their hope to fear. The cherry on top was Tiger Star's ruthless smile at their anguish. With his face hidden by shadows, Kasai simply bowed his head. Behind him, Ishiko muffled the murmurs of worry, and the world dimmed until only the Muromachi boy remained. The others were reveling in their inevitable loss, but he was different. However, the only expression he appeared to have was regret and sadness. Sadness. With his eyes wide with fear, one of the Kamakura soldiers whispered to another, "We can't face Tiger Star without the prophecy. We'll be dead before we can even draw our weapons." With confidence in his voice, another whispered back, "But to give up would be to let down Teisho and the other plethora of men that fought before us. We have to do this, foretold hero or not." While some of the men around him hung their heads in uncertainty, others gave a silent cheer of agreement. Ishiko took a deep breath, for now there was no going back, they needed to move on. Ishiko hardly spoke, but his eyes were filled with doubt, but he said, "We will not be swayed by your threats. The Kamakura will stand strong against you, Tiger Star, prophecy or not." Ryuchi also muttered inaudibly, "Although we'd last longer if he were here." This caused the green-haired leader to glare at him. Tiger Star raised a laughing eyebrow. "The mere idea of you believing you could actually win is laughable. You are outnumbered by hundreds, thousands even, and if you haven't forgotten, there is only one person in the entire line of history that could truly destroy me, of which is none of you," the man said with a wicked grin. His gaze briefly strayed to Kasai, but the boy's head remained hung, still intently examining the ground. He grinned. Ishiko sighed. Tiger Star was absolutely correct, as much as he hated to admit it. In addition to being outnumbered to the point of surrender, their biggest threat and enemy was immortal and could only be eliminated by a single strike. They couldn't reach one of them. Only Naruto was aware of it. "New." Ishiko pondered somberly. His eyes mirrored those of his allies as he looked around. Sadness. Fear. Worry. "I agree." Ishiko inhaled deeply and stepped forward, attracting the attention of all the men and women in the clearing, including Kasai. With his eyes closed, he slowly raised a hand. Tiger Star smiled. It was a sweet win. When Ishiko yelled the words he never imagined hearing, he opened his mouth to gloat their surrender. "For all that have died so valiantly in this bloody battle, Kamakura, attack." It had been the first time in days that I had a smile on my face. Tiger Star's arrogant smile had been snatched from his face and flung into a roaring fire. My grin only got wider. "You bastard, take that." The sound of swords clashing blended with the harsh cries of battle. As feet stomped back and forth, dust was kicked up, enveloping the fighters in a smoky shield. Reds, blacks, and blues clashed. From above, it most likely appeared as though the field had been battered. With blood splattered across the grass and severed limbs strewn everywhere, the battle was already well underway. Halfway out of the ground, or half out of some man's form, stray arrows stuck, and swords gleamed with the crimson stains. Ryuchi and Daisuke were taking care of themselves in an amazing way, as well as two inexperienced warriors of 9 years old could. When the lightning struck, their swords, Hogasha and Bengonin, which already had a thin coating of blood on the tips, gleamed brilliantly. They knew that their alliance didn't stay with them, even though they detested cutting through people they knew. Ryuichi's point of view. I've known these people since birth, and this was wrong on so many levels. It's really annoying when they realize it's me because of the shock and confusion. As if it weren't difficult enough without the confused and terrified expressions. Keep your thoughts on your friends, Ryuichi, and concentrate on the reason. The Kamakura took us in and treated us like their own, whereas the Muromachi only view people as tools or threats. The Muromachi have only brought misery, anguish, grief, and hatred. Perhaps things could have turned out differently if Dad had been a peacemaker. Daisuke's point of view. A few feet away, I saw my brother fighting bravely, and I couldn't help but smile, but I could see the emotional anguish he was going through. I totally got it. After all, just a few months prior, we had referred to these individuals as family. However, we hadn't opened our eyes until, well, let's not consider that. They had never given a damn. To them, we were merely pawns. In Dad's gaze, however, we had discovered a home among the Kamakura, where we were genuinely cared for our true selves rather than our potential. From the start, they had trusted us. Naruto, at least, had. My blood boiled at the mere idea of that brunette killing my sensei. How on earth had Naruto ever harmed him? Naruto never should have died so young. How could a weakling like him have fooled him? Why? It was only now that I realized how much I loved Naruto. I didn't realize I needed him until now. He resembled the father I had always desired but never had. It was too late now. Sasuke's point of view. I fiercely whipped Doragon, my sword, in a tight circle, severing the ambusher's head as he approached. I killed another Muromachi instantly by stabbing him through the chest with a simple flick of my wrist. I pushed his body away and used my blood-red eyes to expertly scan the battlefield for my next victim. Hey, I'm lusting for the blood of every black coat, and it's not my fault. Would you remain composed, after all, if you had just learned that your best friend had been murdered by a rookie Muromachi? Not in my opinion. An idiot ran straight into my line of sight without any plan, so I slashed at him. Naruto's sardonic voice abruptly entered my mind. Have you ever thought of leaving them unconscious? Maybe you wouldn't be so dark and evil all the time. With a sigh, I switched to taijutsu and sheathed my sword. I removed a circle of men with ease, using a small amount of chakra to block each of their pressure points. They collapsed to the ground, paralyzed and unconscious. They could no longer cause trouble later because they were now out of the way. I smirked with satisfaction as I turned, sadness finally showing on my face. I already missed him. Sakura's point of view. At times, it was peculiar. Even though Naruto loved being a shinobi and loved starting fights, he detested bloodshed. I mean, he completed the task without saying a word when it was absolutely required. However, he always fought with Kakashi, Tsunade, or whoever thought there were better ways to deal with people when the victim's fate was uncertain. In the unlikely event that Naruto went completely crazy, he would turn into a murderous machine. Then there was the issue of retaliation and the simple fact that they enraged him so much that things simply became out of control. Okay, so perhaps Naruto wasn't the best at showing mercy when he was angry or in Kyuubi mode, but aside from that, he was generally quite good at the "don't kill unless it's the last option" mentality. He would still detest this, though. Even though there was a good explanation, he would still detest it. He would occasionally complain that we should simply send them to the moon or something completely absurd, but whatever. The child has heart, at least. He did, if I may say so. I was in the middle of a fight with some Muromachi when I felt a wave of sadness and nearly passed out. I wanted to spend a lot of time crying and hiding in a corner, lamenting the death of one of my closest friends. I was able to understand that Naruto had truly lost and that his seemingly limitless bravery, strength, and will to fight had eventually run out. However, I suppose that's the crucial word there. Apparently, I suppose everyone has a limit. Naruto, too. The tears threatened to erupt and pour down my face as they began to well up once more. However, I fiercely held them down. I had no time to weep. Naruto would encourage me to continue. Kakashi's point of view. Sasuke was clearly on a killing rampage, chopping and slicing every man he saw. I let out a sigh. Remind yourself not to irritate Sasuke. With the exception of the occasional tear, Sakura appeared to be holding up okay. Given that their longtime comrade had just been killed, I could understand why they would both be upset. The three have become very close and have started a small family of their own. One of them had vanished. They would likely keep this against me forever, so I had never told them. However, I always considered them to be my family as well, my priceless people. I never really knew my mother, and my father passed away when I was a little child. Since I never had kids of my own, I always thought of Naruto as a son. I'm beginning to like Sasuke. If only he could get over his emo attitude. I couldn't help but smile when I looked at Sakura because she reminded me so much of a daughter. Over the last few years, they have all grown significantly. My son was gone now, though. Killed by one of these jerks from Muromachi. Even I, the current copycat ninja and one of Konoha's greatest Anbu leaders, could not completely comprehend the anger that filled me. I wanted to approach that brunette boy and treat my student the same way he did, only 1,000 times worse. With his katana dragging a little on the ground, Hiraku staggered out of the sea of fighters. His eyes searched the area, wondering why the fight had stopped here. He soon saw his response, though. With his arms folded tightly across his chest and a slight smirk on his face, Tiger Star stood in the middle of the field. Hiraku was immediately overcome with rage and hatred, and he felt as though he wouldn't be able to control the fire that was rising inside of him. He approached him until they were just a few feet away and yelled, "Tiger Star." He said pleasantly, "Hello Hiraku." As though they were having a friendly chat. Hiraku's gaze grew strained. The brunette spat back, "Cut the crap Tiger Star. Start talking." The leader of Muromachi laughed. "You promised you wouldn't hurt him." "Yeah, and I also promised the return of your dad," he continued. Hiraku froze, his face twisted in bewilderment. "Wah?" he exclaimed, startled. Hiraku babbled, You said he was alive?" Tiger Star grinned. "Well, here's some advice for you. The bad guy always lies," he responded. His sword was clipped from its sheath. I couldn't help but wonder who Tiger Star's poor victim was when I watched him draw his sword from its sheath. I was startled to see who was standing there when I looked to the right. Hiraku stood motionless, his face resembling a deer caught in headlights. Tiger Star expertly whipped his sword into a position that allowed him to move, and he charged directly toward Hiraku. My eyes went wide. "Get moving, you moron." However, Hiraku refused to move, as though he were stuck in place by an unidentified force. I realized then and there that Tiger Star was actually going to kill him. I knew I couldn't take this any longer after coming to that realization. It was heartbreaking, impossible, and contrary to my philosophy in every way. I was about to snap. With the tip of his sword extended and aimed precisely at Hiraku's heart, Tiger Star approached. He yelled, "Goodbye, Kamakura," to attract the attention of the other Kamakura elite forces. Hiraku's eyes were tightly shut as he awaited the blow that would instantly end his life. He heard a sickening slicing sound a few seconds later, like metal being pushed through flesh at a speed that was like flying. Hiraku's face was covered in splattered blood. However, he was painless. Had he passed away already? He was afraid to open one eye, but he was shocked by what he saw. Kasai, the rookie warrior, stood guard in front of him. The blade of the sword emerged from the back of his upper chest, barely stopping before striking Hiraku's chest. The blade that was visible was nearly at its hilts, and he was gripping its length. Within seconds, the ground was painted red as crimson poured onto it from both sides of the gouge. The battle surrounding them had ceased by this point, and Kamakura and Muromachi were both paralyzed with disbelief. For what reason would a Muromachi sacrifice himself for a Kamakura? With a painful grunt, Kasai's knees trembled under his weight, and when he did, a startling thing happened. His image shattered and scattered, dissipating like shattered glass fragments mixed with a gentle light glow. Everyone gasped when the dust of power cleared, and Sakura let out a horrified scream. Naruto. Naruto's breathing was labored and his body trembled. Rapid drops of blood were forming a tiny puddle at his feet as they dripped from the wound. All of the fighting stopped as the warriors took in the incredible sight, and the clearing fell silent. All of their minds were filled with the same ideas. What? Tiger Star's shocked expression turned into one of rage and hatred. His eyes narrowed as he hissed, "You traitor." Naruto grinned. "I've been pretty good at that lately, huh?" he said feebly, with a slight smile. Naruto gasped in agony as Tiger Star's teeth tightened and he pushed the blade farther into his body. He wrapped his fingers around the sword's remaining fragment and gripped it tightly, not allowing it to move an inch. Hiraku was startled out of his reverie when the tip struck his chest plate. His mouth was open and his eyes were wide. He stammered, Naruto," and extended his hand slightly toward the boy. The blonde grinned as she turned to face the Kamakura. The remaining soldiers had now awakened from their trances and were either looking on in astonishment or confusion. Ishiko moved forward, placing his hand on his sword's hilt. With a unified look of resolve in their eyes, the other members of the elite Kamakura force followed suit. Tiger Star's eyes darted up and down the ranks. Seeing the blonde's allies start to move forward, he said, "Muromachi, move out," with a sly smile. The warriors in red and black began to retreat, disappearing into the shadowy forest from which they had come. A torrent of blood followed as Tigerstar violently tore his sword from Naruto's body. He shoved the boy to the ground, and since he couldn't defend himself, he fell and hit the ground hard. After giving the Kamakura one last glance, he vanished in a puff of air. After a moment of silence, Ishiko began to give orders to the blue warriors. Ishiko turned to the swordsman and ordered, "Havar, I want you to take all the troops home immediately, before Tigerstar's second of mercy is ended." With a bow, he said, "Right away, sir." The battlefield was cleared in a matter of seconds, leaving only the Leaf Shinobi and the Kamakura's elite forces. Sakura's hands were glowing green as she knelt beside Naruto. She quickly fixed everything that had been broken or dislocated by sweeping her healing chakra over his body, leaving only the jagged hole in his chest. Sweat collected on her forehead as she tried to close the wound with all the strength and focus she could muster for her medical healing. Despite her high level of ability, the blonde's breathing was both rapid and slow. She was seated next to Sasuke, while Daisuke, Hiraku, and Daisuke were seated directly across from him. As the Muromachi watched the pink-haired Chunin attempt to reassemble his sensei, tears were streaming down his face. "Sakura, what's going on? It's been too long and nothing's happening," Sasuke whispered after 5 minutes had passed with no improvement. The medic's eyes were panicked, and she could only shake her head. In response, she muttered, "His heart rate is falling too fast and I don't know what to do." Her actions became increasingly hurried. The Uchiha just gave her a disbelieving look. "You trained for stuff like this for 3 years. You should know what to do," he screamed. Sakura suppressed a sob as she worked, her feelings starting to overwhelm her. "I don't have all the medications or machines that we have back in Konoha. It's like trying to stitch back together a cut with a twig and a reed. It's impossible," she responded in a grave tone. As everyone waited for her to continue, silence descended. "The chances of me saving him out here and in these times aren't very likely." The burning, stabbing, searing pain was unbearable. To get out of the never-ending agony he was experiencing, Naruto wished he would simply pass away. He could now see the wall of blackness approaching in the distance, looming like a menacing death threat. A familiar voice called in a pained tone, "So you're really just going to give up? After all those years of I'll never die, you're just gonna quit?" Naruto's body shook as waves of agony surged through him at an ever-increasing rate. "This pain isn't worth clinging to life. I can only tell that it's going to get worse from here on out, so I might as well take my losses and embrace the black welcomingly." Kyuubi pointed out, his tail slashing out at the fingers of death clawed out at him. "You've been through this before. The fight between you and that dark-haired one. You were wounded pretty severely then too, but you lasted through the pain. The wound wasn't as bad that time, and besides, you were able to speed along my healing process so that the pain was only a small fraction of this. What can you do now that you're dying too? I am the great Kyuubi no Yoko, I will never perish. If your power wasn't weakening by the minute, you'd be repairing my body and I wouldn't be starting at the darkness as we speak. What are you trying to say?" "What I'm trying to say is that your body is rapidly deteriorating and your power is failing. Even if you continue to block death's hand, you will not be able to survive for very long. Simply put, you will vanish with me because your spirit is dying. Way to be positive. All we can do is accept the situation as it is. Fighting against it is pointless because it is inevitable." "That sounds nothing like the obnoxious Gaki I've spent 16 years imprisoned inside. No, is never an answer to your fight. Pain or no pain, you turned it around even after you've looked the Grim Reaper in the face. Why are you hesitating now? All right. What is the purpose of conflict? How about that Sakura girl you have such strong feelings for? I fulfilled my promise by returning her priceless Sasuke. I promise you that she will immediately return to him, even though we have been friends for years since he left. As soon as Sasuke reciprocates his feelings for her, my death will vanish. What about everyone else's aspirations to become Hokage? No matter how many times the other members of Team 7 deny, we are stuck here, so I will never be able to claim the title of Hokage. Everyone probably hates me for betraying them, and my dream of becoming Hokage died the moment we arrived in this time. Prophecy's pretty good. Things would be different. When I arrived, I was already regarded as a hero by the populace. I certainly didn't have anything to prove to them, so I didn't turn around. What am I supposed to do if they've already decided? Nothing at all. And I don't want that. Knowing that there's always one more step I can take to reach my goal will motivate me to perform better. I already have it here, but I haven't earned it in any way." "You're right. All you've done is die." As the girl worked, Ishiko proposed, "Well, what if we took him back to the hideout? where you'd at least have a better place to work than the middle of the field. Not even bothering to look up, she shrugged. I'm not sure what will happen if we move him. He could be with us for a few minutes, or he could die the second his body was moved. I think it'll be too risky, she replied. Sasuke said, but what if we don't? Sakura let out a sigh. Then I don't know how long I'd be able to keep this up. Without a proper place to do this, or the medical supplies in my backpack, it won't be long at the rate his vitals are falling. Talk about being positive. Thanks for the pep talk in my last minutes of breathing. It was your choice to stop fighting for your life, don't blame this on me. You're just sour because you don't have the chance to take over the human race like you've always dreamed of. I know, cuz apparently, my hopes are vanishing just like yours, and I don't even get a say in the matter. No, you don't. I'll decide when I want to leave because this is my life. If your friends could hear what you're saying at this moment, what do you think they would say? Is it important? Indeed, it does, quite a bit. You are aware of it. Do you really believe that your allies will simply desert you because you made a poor choice? I would like to remind you that you are not the first member of your small group to betray and disappoint so many people. Again with the great words of praise. Hey, I'm being honest here. And the reality is that your friends are disintegrating in the real world because they are unable to save you. While you just lie here and feel sorry for yourself, they are fighting with everything they have because they know you are dying. Will you disappoint them once more? You've bonded with a lot of people in the last 5 months, so don't you want to make it right? Or will you allow their sole hope to pass them by when he had the opportunity to prevent it? Because even after you're gone, Sakura will continue to pump chakra into your body, I can promise you. Is she still making an effort? Obviously. Did you assume she would forget about you simply because you were able to get Sasuke back? Kinda. It only serves to highlight how much you actually know and how much can change. And who knows? Maybe things will improve up there, but if you just sit here and wait to die, you'll never know. Sakura turned away from her friend for the first time in roughly 20 minutes and argued, I don't want to move him because I don't know if that'll be enough to lose him for good. Well, if we don't do something soon, then we're going to lose him for sure. If we can just get him back to base, there's at least a bigger chance, Ishiko responded. Sakura shot back, I don't want to take that risk. Their argument was cut short when a hand suddenly grabbed her wrist. With resolute cerulean eyes, Naruto muttered, do what you want. Sit here, move me. Stitch me up with a twig and a reed. I can hold on for that long. They all sat in stunned silence, gazing at the astonished teenager. Daisuke exclaimed, Naruto, you're alive. With a beaming expression. Naruto gave a little smile in return. His eyes were strained and far away as he replied, yay, but not for long unless we do something. Sakura jumped into action after nodding in comprehension. Sakura said bravely, okay, we have to get him back to camp. Sasuke, take him on your back. You're the fastest of all of us, but go easy. The rest of us won't be far behind. Sasuke gave a nod. With great care, he lifted his friend off the ground and placed him on his back. Sasuke whispered, Naruto, don't go into the light. You're going to be fine. Just wait. Naruto grinned. He answered, it's more like a wall of black, but I get the idea. Sasuke smiled and disappeared in a blue streak. Another section of the looming darkness was destroyed as Kyuubi's tail swung out once more. What he had just destroyed was immediately replaced by the thunderous waves that roared in the distance, but it was nothing compared to that. A foxy grin appeared on his face as he was momentarily distracted by an explosion to his left. As he cut through a rising wave, he muttered, good to see you're doing something to help me for a change. Naruto grinned. Cause using your power to unleash your sense of blood. Thirst isn't considered a kind thing for you, especially when it puts all the people around me at risk. Shut up. That's what I thought. Kyuubi called out, one tail flying out to shield his container from an arm coming up behind him. Keep your mind in the battle kit. Just as the black hand would have smashed into the teen's back, he encircled the boy's body with his chakra. On contact, the darkness vanished, and a high-pitched screech reverberated throughout the moist room. Naruto smiled as Kyuubi's tail wound away. As he sent a huge fire dragon at the wall and flew through a string of seals, he asked, who said demons didn't have hearts? Its remains fell to the ground like rain after smashing through it like glass. Panting, Kyuubi remarked, go above, see how things are doing. I can hold it off for a while on my own. With a nod, Naruto vanished in a burst of blue chakra. Naruto regained consciousness after Sakura had completed bandaging the remaining wounds and scrapes on his body. She grinned. The boy was in a coma state when they arrived, frightening the medical ninja to no end. She calmed down and got to work, attempting to help the Kyuubi as best she could after Sasuke told her that he was assisting them in fending off death's hands. As she attempted to stop the blood from pouring out of the open wound, she inquired, "How's the battle going?" Although Naruto shrugged, it was an uncomfortable motion. "It's tiring, especially with the fact that Kyuubi's power is limited. His chakra capacity is severely cut due to the weakness from the wound, and besides, with Sakura-chan pumping her chakra into my body, if the Kyuubi uses too much of his power at once, it would overtake hers, ultimately killing her," Naruto succinctly stated. The pink-haired girl ignored the two other shinobi's suspicious glances as she focused more intently on her task. His glistening blue eyes dimmed, a little duller, and he winced abruptly. "Shit, it's regrouping." He groaned, his anguish clearly audible. He closed his eyes and breathed evenly and shallowly. In a matter of seconds, his body went limp and he was once again in his depths, using Kyuubi to fight off the darkness. With a sigh, Ishiko moved away from the wall. His gaze remained fixed on the blonde as he approached Sakura, who was kneeling. The teenager said, "We need to ask him about his betrayal when he wakes up." Sakura wiped perspiration from her brow and said simply, "Ishiko, this isn't the time. He might not live much longer and we need to find out why he betrayed the Kamakura, no matter what the cost," he said with cruelty. The shinobi's eyes were fierce as she looked up at him. "The boy is on his deathbed and all you care about is that one mistake? That one mistake could have cost the Kamakura the war. So while Naruto is laying here, losing his life by the second, all you can think about is something that took place hours ago? I know he made a mistake, but I'm sure he has a reason." Kakashi supplemented Sakura's explanation by saying, "Besides, Naruto has always done what was good for his comrades. He's been like that ever since I took him on." Masuru approached Ishiko and said, "That still doesn't mean that he's not a Muromachi. How do we know that he isn't just a spy for Tiger Star?" With tears and frustration welling up in her eyes, Sakura screamed, "Maybe I should mention to you that Naruto sacrificed his life for Hiriku's, a Kamakura?" As everyone focused on what the girl had just said, the room fell silent. With his head bent, Hiraku concealed the tears that he knew were beginning to well up. He wished more than anything that he was the one lying there rather than Naruto because he was drowning in guilt. At that moment, Naruto regained consciousness, his blue eyes lifeless and filled with grief. "The wall is advancing too quickly now and Kyuubi's power is about to give out. He can't keep this up," he murmured. Sakura's hands began to move more quickly, but she remained silent. With a bewildered look on his face, Sasuke approached his friend. "So, you're saying?" Sakura said over her shoulder, "Basically, I have about 3 minutes to save him or he's gone." The only sound in the room, for the millionth time that day, was the quiet whoosh of chakra coming from Sakura's hands. Ishiko shifted to Naruto's left side and kept a close eye on him. He began in a chilly tone, "Naruto, I have a few questions to ask you." Naruto gave a nod. He replied, "I know, I heard you talking." His eyes gave a little, revealing the pain he was clearly experiencing at the moment. Masuru arrived to join his leader. "So, you are ready to confess?" Together, Sakura and Sasuke glared at the teenager with the raven hair, but Naruto grabbed Sasuke's arm and held him back. Sasuke snarled and resisted Naruto's grip, saying, "I won't let him talk about you like you're trash. That's happened enough the past 15 years and I'm sick of watching you go through it with a smile." The boy held tight to Sasuke's wrist despite his deteriorating strength by the minute. The blonde remarked, "They deserve to know, you all deserve to know." The Uchiha appeared to be about to argue for a moment, but after a minute of silence, he relaxed his muscles and dropped his stance. He lowered himself to the floor and sat beside the bed, staring at the wood cracks. Daisuke approached Sakura from the far end of the room and knelt beside her to observe her work. He would occasionally look at Naruto, but the Muromachi would turn away with teary eyes when the teenager smirked back. Naruto sighed. He was aware that this would not be simple. It started after the battle in the village, on the way back. "I knew that you guys would have a problem with the power that was unleashed. The power I couldn't control. So, I disbanded myself from the Kamakura, deciding to go my own way and help you in the war from my own side," Naruto said. Hiriku's eyes were wide as he looked at the boy from his corner. Why wasn't he included in the explanation? Why did he not blurt out that he wasn't at fault? He ought to be pointing at him and shouting that he, not anyone else, was the traitor. Naruto smiled quickly in response to his intense gaze. Hiriku's eyes grew wider still. He was now acting as a stand-in for Naruto, who knew that he had lied to get him out of camp. The teenager had to use all of his strength to keep from crying right then and there. I was walking through the woods, looking for somewhere to stay for the night, when I ran into Tiger Star. It was like he had been waiting for me, knowing I would be there. Naruto went on. He said he had an offer to make me. At first I tried to just walk away. I had no interest in what he wanted to say. It was then that he told me that he wanted me to become his apprentice, said Naruto. Masuru grinned as though he knew the answer already. Sasuke gave him a warning look but took no further action. I turned him down flat. I didn't even need to think. Masuru received a smug grin from Sasuke. But then, Tiger Star said something, and it left me no other choice but to join him, and do a convincing job at it too. Naruto said with solemnity. This was it, the reason why Naruto had betrayed the Kamakura and his friends. Ishiko leaned forward in anticipation. With his arms folded tightly across his chest, Masuru questioned, what in the world would make you even begin to dream of betraying us? Tiger Star got me with my greatest weakness, my heart. There was silence in the room, and nobody dared to breathe or speak. Ishiko said, huh? Sasuke sighed and Sakura giggled. With his hands clenched, Hiraku asked, you mean to tell me that the bastard stabbed you through the heart? Well, besides just recently, Naruto grinned. The blonde bit his lip nervously and explained, no, not like that. See, it starts a really long time ago, and involves things, well, out of the ordinary. According to him, this was the time of truth. He would have to reveal his true self. Ishiko gave him a nod. The green-haired boy sagged into a seat at Naruto's bed's foot and urged, we have a lot of time on our hands. Naruto let out a sigh. Here's nothing, then. It began before I was born. A few nights before I came into the world, a powerful demon, the greatest of the 9 great Biju, attacked our village. He was called the Kyuubi no Yuko, and he takes the form of a huge red fox, whose strength goes off the charts. He was provoked by a rouge from outside our village to assault, and when he did, he hit hard. Our numbers were cut down to the maximum low and we had to draw out our most desperate plans just to hold him off. It was finally, as a last resort, my dad went out, and gave his life to destroy the Kyuubi and save our village. Naruto explained, his sapphire eyes dulling when he spoke the death of his father. Ishiko whispered, his eyes glowing with admiration and sorrow, the great 99th son. Naruto nodded before continuing after inhaling deeply. My dad wasn't able to kill the Kyuubi completely, so he used a forbidden jutsu to seal the demon's spirit and power in a newborn baby. He had wanted the baby to be looked upon as a hero, the one that held the demon from harming anyone ever again. But, his plan backfired. The child was hated by all, and a great majority of the village would love to see him killed. Some would even go on raids, people banding together in an effort to destroy the demon boy once and for all. The child had no friends, no family, no one to care or protect him. He was truly alone. As the Kamakura processed this, Naruto's words echoed throughout the room. The shinobi listened, watching the teenager with sad eyes as he told the story. His story, without knowing who the blonde was referring to. When the child had grown and was placed on a ninja team, in a moment of rage in his 12th year, he awakened the beast and was able to use his power, though he went into an uncontrollable frenzy of anger and madness. In a way, it wasn't even him anymore. His mind became a killing machine, his hands itching to be soaked in blood. The Kyuubi's soul affected him when he released it, making him the greatest weapon a ninja could ever dream to be. But he never viewed it that way. All he ever wanted was to be wanted, and to feel whole. Naruto said, his cerulean eyes filled with shoulders slumped and his voice becoming softer and softer as he said. To hear him now, the warriors had to swarm around his bed. So, he worked to grow stronger, because then people would acknowledge his existence, because maybe he could become someone that others would look up to, instead of treat like a low life form. And it was along with this goal that he found people he cared for, and that cared for him. He swore that he would protect them until his last breath, because after a long while of being alone, nothing mattered more to him than his precious people. Sakura and Sasuke both smiled at the blonde, who smiled back. Kakashi even grinned. His foolish student had made great progress since his master had cursed the blonde, and although he should be permanently damaged and messed up, he was more powerful than any of the genin he had previously instructed. They were all. So what does this have to do with you? Masuru asked, expressing the question Kamakura was currently having. Naruto gave a gentle smile. Because the boy in this story is me. Tiger Star paced the length of his opulent tent, frowning glumly. Kyoto stood in the center, his eyes following his master. With a roar, Tiger Star stopped by his desk and swept everything away, scattering papers and bottles all over the room and breaking the glass as it hit the floor. Tiger Star snorted, his golden eyes blazing with rage. I should have known he would pull a stunt like that. Now my plan is ruined, he said. Knowing better than to obstruct the leader in his rage, Kyoto swallowed and took a step back. Then, with a sneer of evil lighting up his face, the Tiger of Time halted his furious tirade and came to a halt. Well, then he's just sealed his fate. No one crosses Tiger Star and lives to tell about it. It would be an understatement to say that everyone was taken aback. They were all absolutely taken aback. Daisuke stammered, What? For the first time in nearly a day. Ichiko began, so, you're saying that, the power we saw back at the village, but stopped, clearly lost in thought. Naruto gave a serious nod. In an attempt to hide the last part, Naruto whispered, the strength you saw was the Kyuubi's power. Or at least, I think it was. Regretfully, today is just another one of those lucky days. What do you mean you thought? Didn't you know what aura you were wielding? Ichiko inquired. Yeah, Kaya said, my eyebrows nearly burned off from the pure energy emanating from you. Kakashi was observing the blonde with interest as well. If the Kyuubi was acting strangely, then something had to be done. Naruto gave a shrug. When I was being trained in the 3 years I was gone, Jiraiya told me all about the dangers of being a Jinchuriki, and how learning about your Biju could help me immensely in the future. So, we took off about a week or so and I spent all my time meditating, becoming in sync with the Kyuubi. We came to terms and eventually came to the point where we could call each other friend. And after all that time with him, I know his chakra sense, the feeling of transforming, and even his voice is burned into my brain. But in the village, I know that wasn't the Kyuubi I know's chakra. It was darker, denser, evil. Naruto elaborated. Unaware of the Kyuubi's dual personality, Kakashi furrowed his brow in exasperation. But the ninja, trained intellect, a separate part of his mind, was telling him it was far worse than that. He had a hunch that this side of the Kyuubi might end up being a problem down the road, one that might be lethal to humanity. So, what you're telling me is that you hold one of the most powerful demons history has ever known? Ichiko asked. Naruto gave a nod. With a somewhat dejected expression, the teenager answered, that's about it in simple terms. Ichiko paused to process everything. The 18-year-old questioned, so, what did Tiger Star say to force you to switch to the Muromachi side? Well, the conversation went like this, a week ago, in the woods. Naruto, I wish for you to come with me and become my apprentice. The only sounds in the woods were the wind in the trees and the songs of the birds. Naruto flinched as though he had been hit, and a shocked expression appeared on his face. With his cerulean eyes exploding with rage, the boy screamed, Join you? Why in my right mind would I join you? Tiger Star grinned. The man answered, because you so-called friends betrayed you. Naruto's eyes narrowed. What the hell are you talking about? Tiger Star lied through his teeth and stated, I'm talking about the fact that no one ever said that you had to leave. They weren't even thinking about it. Hiraku told you that of his own free will. Naruto's gaze expanded. What? Hiraku felt threatened by the power you showed. He was always known as the strong one, the talented 16-year-old. And then you came along, stripping him of that in a second. Face it, he wants you gone. Tiger Star stated. Anger and frustration creased Naruto's brow. Why was the Muromachi telling him this? When Tiger Star spoke of the Kamakura's destruction, his eyes took on a dreamy gleam. Come with me, Naruto, and I can make you stronger than anyone has ever seen. You will be the greatest of all legends in history. You will be known as the one who single-handedly defeated the Kamakura, he said. Naruto's jaw tightened and he gritted his teeth. Even if what you say is true, even if they did want me gone because they found me dangerous, I would never betray them. Not if I was dying at your feet. Now get the hell out of here before I decide to kick your sorry ass from here into the next millennium. Naruto yelled as he started walking away. However, the man stepped in front of him before he could leave the clearing, wiping his kind smile from his face. Okay, let me put this in terms you'll understand. You'll come with me, battle in the coming fight, and do a good job pretending to be their traitor. Tiger Star sighed. Naruto sneered. At that, the blonde said, and what if I don't? Tiger Star simply grinned back. If you refuse, I'll march right over to their little hideout and slaughter every single one of them while you sit there in the front row seat, watching. Tiger Star said. The fight and resistance in Naruto's eyes vanished instantly, and his defense gave way, leaving him with only grief and hatred for the man in front of him. Tiger Star, do we have a deal? After a long minute of glaring at the golden-eyed leader, Naruto muttered in defeat, yes. Tiger Star grinned. The man spun around on his heel and said, that's what I thought. Now, come. but he turned once more before he was gone. And if you try anything, such as getting a message out to your friends or something, I promise you, you won't live through it, he concluded. Without awaiting a response, he vanished into the forest. With a sigh, Naruto cast a sidelong glance toward the Kamakura's base. Then he went to the Muramachi camp with his jailer. Now, with a faint triumphant smile, Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi acknowledged that the boy would never have betrayed them without a valid reason. Masuru and Ishiko, meanwhile, lowered their heads in embarrassment. In fact, they believed the teenager did it voluntarily. Ishiko looked at Hiraku in the corner and sighed, "Well, I do believe that explains it." The brunette flinched. He knew exactly what his expression had conveyed. "Later on, we will discuss this," Sakura remarked, "but there's one thing that's still bothering me." Naruto gave her a perplexed look. "What?" Tiger Star said that if you tried anything, which you did, you wouldn't live through it, she said. Now that he saw her idea, Naruto nodded. "That's true. Though he did almost kill me. I guess that would count," said Naruto. Sakura didn't agree. "But if he said you wouldn't live through it, then why are you still here? Besides, I don't think he expected you to jump in the way of that blade," Sakura replied. Naruto gave a shrug. "Well, now you're just con." Naruto's breath caught in his throat and his eyes widened. Sakura observed him for a moment, but when nothing changed, she became concerned. She muttered, "Naruto?" Then everything happened quickly. As his wound started to bleed freely, Naruto's hand flew up to his heart and let out a cry of pure agony. In a few seconds, his cobalt eyes changed color from crimson to amethyst and back again. Sakura frantically swept her hands over Naruto's body once more and said, "Naruto, what's wrong?" Naruto's breathing was ragged and short as he leaned back heavily against the wall. Before he passed out, he muttered, "I think I found out what he meant." Sakura's eyes widened as her fingers pressed against his wrist. She began working more quickly than she had ever done before, driven by a new sense of urgency. Sasuke said, "What's going on?" "I don't know, but I can't help. His body's not accepting my chakra at all. It's about as helpful as healing a brick," Sakura said with rage. With fear shining brightly, Daisuke asked, "What do we do?" Sakura let out a sigh. "All we can do now is wait, and hope." As Sakura worked, the room was filled with a great deal of fear and silence. Her eyes were strained, and her brow was beady with perspiration. With a panicked tone, Sasuke questioned, "How do you not understand what's wrong? Why can't you heal him?" Sasuke looked up from his hands and fixed his gaze on his teammate, saying, "I don't know. It's all different from what I studied, no way." "What? It's this old poison, only made in this era of time. It was wiped out when the plant they used died after a nearby volcano erupted," Sakura said in a quiet voice. Sasuke's expression changed to one of relief. The Uchiha asked in a hopeful tone, "So, that means you can cure it now, right?" Sakura's only reaction was a grimace. The teenager's smile disappeared. He muttered, "You can't, can you?" Sakura let out a sigh. The cure was lost only years before it was destroyed. Lots of people died from the poison in the 5 last years it was in existence. Not only was the cure lost, but it was almost impossible to learn. "Even if we had the cure here, it would take me months just to learn how to do it properly," Sakura said with tears in her eyes. Sasuke's expression was unreadable as he sagged into his chair and gazed at the wall behind her. Sakura's hands ceased to glow, and a tear trickled down her cheek. "It's no use and there's no point in avoiding it, we're going to lose him." The mindscape with his head scraping at his chest and his voice laced with pain, Naruto exclaimed, "Ah! What's going on?" as he searched for the source of the fierce fiery sting that was continuously tearing through his body. "That Tiger Star figure warned you that you'd regret doing anything stupid. I knew something was different when the sword was impaled in your chest." "What are you talking about?" "I'm saying that maybe the poison had been for his intended target." "You mean Hiraku?" "Exactly. But maybe he was only testing it out. I can see now that it was only a small dosage. A bigger one would have killed you instantly. Maybe he would have." "You think he was planning to use it on me all along?" "That's a possibility." "Well, that's interesting. So, what now?" We're scheduled for an appointment with the Grim Reaper." "What? Well fuck, if I knew I was going to die all along, then I should have just given up back on the field." "Don't say that. I'm not going to let us die. I have an idea, but it might cost us in the future." "What? I might just be dreaming and I might just cause us and your friends some deep shit." "What?" "Well, I was considering, outside. Since Sakura had predicted that Naruto would die during the night, everyone camped out in the room, hoping to be close to each other when the last hour arrived. However, they all fell asleep somewhere around midnight, so when they woke up, they were quite surprised to find the bed empty. After everyone had finished moping in their grief, they decided it was time to get some sleep. When she discovered that she had been sleeping on the boy's arm all night, Sakura was the first to notice and quickly woke the others. What might have occurred? She shouted. Ishiko said, his green eyes dull and tired from a restless night and an impending day of mourning. I didn't know your body disintegrate when you died. Is it possible that someone could have come and taken him in the middle of the night? Sakura pondered, and Sasuke sneered. With a dead body, what would anyone want? I'm not sure, however, there must be an explanation for this. What is causing all of us to panic? Everyone's eyes widened as a voice called from the doorway. They all recognized the voice, but it was impossible. A smile spread across Sakura's face, and her jade eyes glowed with delight as she turned slowly and met a pair of gentle, jovial cerulean eyes. Naruto? The blonde grinned, and everyone looked twice, wondering if this was a dream, a cruel joke, or something else entirely. Will you please stop giving me that look? The teenager said, smiling teasingly, it's freaking me out. Sakura rushed to his side and embraced him after a brief moment of shock. You're all right, she said quietly, her voice full of passion. Sasuke approached and grinned at him. He said, I'm glad to see you're out and about. Naruto grinned back and looked around the room. How are you doing? With bewildered eyes, Ishiko pondered, and Naruto winced. I have a long story, but it's not time. First, we need to work on a few things, the blonde said as she began to leave the room. What are you discussing? Masuru inquired. The last preparations must be completed. Tiger Star will do more than simply wait for us to be prepared. We must start working because he will attack while we are unconscious, Naruto remarked. Organizing a tent. What do you suggest we do, then? Ishiko pondered as he reclined in his chair. Naruto let out a sigh. He pointed to a tiny area in the trees on the map and said, well, this is where Kyoto's training base was all those months ago. I have no doubt that he's picked up and moved by now, or maybe returned to the main headquarters, he said. However, I believe that the primary location is within a 7-mile radius of that training camp. They would have to remain nearby for supplies and medical equipment. The base's defenses are most likely strong, with many warriors swarming the area and heavily armed guards. Our best option will be to attack from the front, Naruto clarified. The shinobi gave him a disbelieving look as everyone's mouths fell open. So, you think we'll approach Tiger Star directly? Masuru asked, his tone bare of surprise and incredulity, and Naruto nodded. And why would we launch a frontal assault? Isn't the back or side preferable? Ishiko made the observation. In actuality, it will likely be more difficult to penetrate the sides and back. In the event of a surprise attack, they have probably erected more defenses on those sides. People assume that if they anticipate an ambush, they will target the obvious, such as the sides or back. However, it will be unusual and unexpected if we attack them from the front. Alias sneered, I don't think they believe anyone is dumb enough to do that. Exactly. Naruto continued, that's why they wouldn't see it coming. Ishiko's jaw tightened in contemplation. He didn't want to acknowledge it, but the blonde's wild idea might actually work. Are you certain that visiting them is a good idea? It would be better, after all, if we pulled them out into the open, Kaya stated. They would have more room to attack us if we had them all out in a clear area. However, our army would have the advantage if a small number of us entered their base and lured everyone out to the tree line. Naruto clarified, if only half of them followed, they would call for help, and eventually we would be dealing with the whole thing. However, what if they benefit from the forest line? Ishiko remarked, this plan could totally backfire. Naruto shrugged. Trying and failing is preferable to not trying at all. Furthermore, we don't have much time left before Tiger Star tries the same thing, Naruto remarked. Do you honestly believe he would attempt the same concept? Ishiko pondered. Naruto remarked, well, I'd rather not sit here and find out. The green-eyed leader bowed his head thoughtfully, and after a few minutes of silence, he looked up with a bold smile. Prepare the warriors. We have a battle ahead of us. Later, Ishiko knew what he had said to make Naruto betray them, and he was certain that he blamed him for everything that had happened. Hiraku was by himself in a corner of a training field, his breathing labored and his sweat dripping on his forehead. He had spent hours practicing his sword work, trying to distract himself from the lecture and punishment he knew was imminent. He was lost in his thoughts when he failed to notice someone walking toward him. The boy was startled out of his reverie by a voice saying, "You're really talented with a sword, you know." He jumped and dropped his blade, but he quickly recovered and caught it before it clattered to the ground. Hiraku turned around, surprised to see who was standing there. Hiraku lowered his eyes and muttered, "Naruto." He could still stare at him for a long time, but each time he did, he felt a great deal of guilt. The blonde grinned and approached, while the brunette stood motionless, wanting to run but being unable to do so. "So, would you like to play scrimmage?" Hiraku merely watched him with wary eyes, but Naruto smiled warmly and said, "I'm way out of practice and watching you might give me some new knowledge." "You're not serious," Hiraku whispered. "No, am I really that bad?" Hiraku merely gave him a sorrowful glance as Naruto joked, his sapphire eyes glimmering with humor. "You don't need to act as though you're okay with it. I'll wait, then. Will you not be angry with me for deceiving you and saying that everyone wanted you to leave? For nearly killing you twice already?" Hiraku said, and Naruto let out a sigh. Naruto said, "I am okay with it because I know why you did it." Hiraku gave him a doubtful look and said, "I heard Tiger Star boasting to Kyoto about it. In order to get you to throw me out, he made up the story that your father was his prisoner." Hiraku lowered his eyes as Naruto replied, "He wanted the power I had used at the village for himself, and he knew that if he offered you a trade, you'd do it. However, that does not imply that it was correct." The brunette sighed, "I lied to you and everyone here, and you had been nothing but helpful and kind to me. You were acting on your intuition, you know. You were doing what you believed to be right," the blonde remarked. "If I had the choice, I would do everything in my power to save my dad. However, that still doesn't justify it, and I ought to have realized that he was lying. How long has a Muramachi kept his word? I suppose I knew it in my heart as well, but I still did it. I'm so foolish. You nearly died as a result of my decision, and the Kamakura nearly lost the war." Hiraku groaned pitifully, "I deserve to be banned." Naruto grinned. "Who said you would be prohibited?" the teenager said, and Hiraku looked up. "We both know it's coming, so don't try to make me feel better," Hiraku assumed. "Ishiko won't think twice about kicking me out of the troop because I did something that's unforgivable." Naruto's smile only got bigger. "I wouldn't be so sure. What are you discussing?" the Kamakura inquired. "I'm saying that I spoke with Ishiko earlier and told him everything, including his deceit and Tiger Star's proposal." Hiraku's face lit up a little as Naruto clarified, "He understands, and though he isn't very happy and there will be a penalty, you aren't going to be booted off the force." "Really? Is he prepared to give me another chance?" The brunette's smile faltered a little as he asked, "Are you willing to give me a second chance?" Naruto nodded. Naruto grinned. "Of course. So, are we going to practice or what?" Naruto asked, rising to his feet and drawing his sword from its sheath. Naruto inquired, and Hiraku grinned. The boy fell into a stance and said, "Let's get to it. We only have a limited amount of time before we move out." Naruto responded by assuming his own defensive stance. What about Hiraku? There is nothing that cannot be forgiven. Only a few hours had passed since the sun had set, and the night sky was tinted a dark purple, with the trees casting dark, menacing silhouettes against it. The breeze was light and quiet, as though it knew what would happen at dawn the following day. The massive walls of the Muramachi's main base loomed, sending menacing shadows dancing across the forest floor, and 7 warriors in blue battle armor and 4 foreigners wearing their ninja gear were nearby, but completely hidden from the search towers a mile away.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.